General Hospital spoilers reveal that Willow's abrupt decision to cancel her wedding to Drew marks not only a turning point in her romantic narrative, but also signals a much darker and more emotionally complex shift in her overall trajectory, one rooted in obsession, guilt, and the unresolved longing for the family she has slowly watched slip away. While to outsiders the cancellation may seem like a simple moment of hesitation at the altar, for Willow it represents the crumbling of everything she had tried to build out of denial and desperation. Her love for Drew, however sincere at times, was never meant to last, built on false promises, unspoken betrayals, and a growing sense that she was sacrificing her core identity to escape the truth. That truth, now unavoidable, is Michael, the man she hurt, the father of her children, and the one connection she cannot emotionally sever, no matter how much time or distance has passed. In the aftermath of the failed wedding, Willow finds herself spiraling into a psychological state marked by obsessive reflection. Every quiet moment becomes a stage for haunting memories. Michael brushing Amelia's hair, Wiley's laughter echoing down the hallway, the sensation of walking past their old home and hearing nothing but silence. The pain is no longer distant, it is daily. It is sharp, and it fuels a need in her that she can no longer suppress. This isn't about rekindling romance, not yet. Instead, it is about rewriting her place in the Corinthos family story. About reclaiming a narrative that has been ripped from her hands by consequence and choice alike. Willow begins to study Michael again, not as an ex-partner, but as a mirror to everything she lost. She watches how he carries himself with the children, the way he speaks about family, the quiet strength in his eyes that reminds her of a time when she believed she was safe. The regret she feels over aligning herself with Drew, whose involvement with Nina now haunts her like a cruel joke, intensifies her need to reconnect with Michael not just for herself, but for Wiley and Amelia. She starts crafting her approach not through grand gestures, but with intimate, emotionally manipulative overtures. She doesn't beg for forgiveness outright. She creates moments that subtly position her as the victim, the misunderstood mother who simply lost her way. But the truth is, Willow is no longer the woman who once stood beside Michael as a partner. She is fractured, haunted by her own decisions and gripped by a relentless obsession to belong again. Her mind begins to twist reality. She convinces herself that Michael misses her just as deeply, that he is simply guarding his heart. She begins to project imaginary scenarios where he welcomes her back, where their children run to her without hesitation, where everything is whole again. And when those fantasies don't immediately become real, the desperation deepens. She becomes bolder, more invasive, pushing boundaries under the guise of maternal concern. She volunteers to attend Wiley's school meetings. She sends messages to Amelia's caretaker under Michael's radar. She lingers around the Quartermain estate, hoping for accidental encounters that feel choreographed in her mind. This obsessive need to re-enter Michael's life also begins to bleed into how she perceives Drew. Rather than seeing him as a mistake, she begins to paint him as the villain who corrupted her journey, a man who led her astray when she was most vulnerable. This reframing allows her to cast herself in the role of the prodigal mother, someone who strayed but returned wiser, deserving of compassion and a second chance. She even considers making a public statement or appearing before the family to formally renounce Drew, to portray herself as a woman awakening from a nightmare. And yet, even as Willow pushes forward, Michael remains guarded. His concern for the children overrides any personal pity he may feel. He remembers the warnings, the betrayals, the lies, especially surrounding Willow's bizarre surveillance of Daisy and her cruel manipulation of Sasha. He sees not just a remorseful woman, but a potentially unstable one. And this fuels his internal conflict. Does he give Willow the access she pleads for? Does he risk the emotional stability of Wiley and Amelia to feed her need for redemption? For Willow, this hesitation is unbearable. The more she senses Michael's doubt, the more she escalates. She begins to plant emotional triggers, letters from the children, carefully chosen gifts, coincidental appearances at public places where the family gathers. She weaves herself into the Corinthos rhythm again, one quiet day at a time. But the obsession takes its toll. Her mind no longer distinguishes between what is real and what is imagined. She believes she has a right to reclaim what she lost, no matter what the cost. Her identity, her motherhood, her place in the world, it is all bound to the family she once had. As the weeks progress, what began as a plea for visitation becomes a psychological battle for ownership. Willow isn't just fighting for time with her children, she is attempting to rewrite the entire emotional history between her and Michael. And in doing so, she risks losing the last fragments of clarity and self-awareness she has left. The more Michael resists, the more her behavior skews toward obsession. She monitors his relationships. She fixates on his schedule. She begins to fear that another woman, perhaps Sasha, if she returns, will replace her entirely. And that thought alone ignites a fury and panic that sends Willow into a dark, volatile headspace. What's unfolding is no longer just a personal journey of heartbreak and redemption. It is a slow-burning psychological unraveling driven by grief, guilt, and a fierce maternal instinct turned toxic. Willow's story is no longer about love, it's about possession, control. And the terrifying idea that once something slips from her hands, she will do anything, no matter how emotionally unstable, to take it back. Willow is now facing a devastating reckoning. One driven not by fleeting emotion, but by the harsh realization that her past choices have irreversibly altered her path. What was once a hope for redemption has collapsed under the weight of her darkest secret, her role in the kidnapping and forced exile of Daisy Gilmore. This truth, long buried beneath layers of justifications and denial, has finally surfaced, and with it comes the unraveling of every fragile tie she still held to the life she once had with Michael, Wiley, and Amelia. The emotional fallout is immense. Michael, upon discovering Willow's secret, does not react with sympathy or sadness. Instead, he is filled with a cold, righteous fury that strips away any remaining softness he once reserved for her. To him, Willow has crossed a line that no amount of regret or apology can erase. This is not a misunderstanding. It's not a situation that can be explained away as maternal instinct or protective desperation. Michael sees the act for what it truly is, an unhinged decision that endangered a child, betrayed a family, and emotionally destroyed Sasha, all for reasons that now feel selfish and indefensible. The moment Michael learns the full scope of Willow's actions, his demeanor shifts entirely. There is no hesitation, no internal conflict. He delivers a firm, heartbreaking ultimatum: Willow is to stay away from Wiley and Amelia indefinitely. There will be no supervised visits. No slow reconciliation, no rebuilding of trust. For Michael, this is no longer about boundaries, it is about protection. About ensuring that his children are never again exposed to a woman capable of such cruelty masquerading as concern. This rejection hits Willow like a tidal wave. 4 weeks. She had been building toward the hope that perhaps by severing ties with Drew and abandoning her delusions, she could mend what was broken. But with this truth exposed, every ounce of progress evaporates. The look in Michael's eyes is no longer conflicted, it is final. The man she once loved no longer sees her as the mother of his children, but as a threat to their safety. This realization plunges Willow into a mental and emotional freefall. She replays every choice, every lie, every impulsive action that led to this moment. And the weight of it all becomes unbearable. Her dreams of a family, her fantasy of a second chance, disintegrate before her eyes. And the worst part is that this new reality is not a phase. It is not a temporary punishment or a dramatic overreaction. It is a carefully considered boundary set by a father who refuses to gamble with the emotional well-being of his children. Michael knows that forgiving Willow would mean erasing the pain of Daisy's disappearance, of Sasha's torment, and of his own betrayal. He cannot do that. Not now. Not ever. As word of Willow's action spreads, whether whispered within the halls of General Hospital or passed quietly through the Quartermain household, she becomes increasingly isolated. The people who once pitted her now keep their distance. Even those who once championed her resilience now question whether she ever truly recovered from her emotional collapse after Nina and Carly's custody war. Portia, who once sympathized with Willow's pain, withdraws her support. Liesel, once a quiet advocate, refuses to look her in the eye. And Michael? He disappears into a life where Willow no longer has a place. Willow's descent is slow, tragic, and inevitable. She clings to remnants of routine, volunteering at the hospital, writing letters she never sends, but each day becomes a reminder that she no longer has access to what she cherishes most. Wiley's laugh, Amelia's bedtime routines. The warmth of family dinners, these are now memories locked behind a door she no longer has the key to. And no amount of regret or suffering will change that. What makes this even more haunting is Willow's understanding that this outcome was not the result of fate, but of her own doing. Her obsession with control. Her inability to face her own pain without lashing out, and her fixation on revenge led her here. She did not just lose a wedding or a relationship, she lost the very soul of her life, her children. And as Michael doubles down on his decision, perhaps even seeking legal means to ensure Willow stays away, it becomes clear that this chapter in her life is not one that can be rewritten. It is over. And the emotional wreckage she now sits in is entirely of her own making. In the end, this is not just a story of betrayal, it is a story of a mother's implosion. A woman who had everything. Who overcame illness, trauma, and family collapse, only to destroy herself in a single act of desperation. And for Michael, there is no turning back. Willow crossed the line. And now she must live with the consequences of a truth she can never undo. Willow's descent into emotional chaos intensifies with every breath she takes away from Wiley and Amelia. The two anchors she once believed gave her purpose and redemption. What began as heartbreak after Michael cut all ties is now morphing into something far more volatile, an obsessive need to reclaim control and redefine the narrative of motherhood on her own warped terms. The failure of her wedding to Drew was not just a public humiliation, but a symbolic fracture that severed her last perceived source of power. With Drew gone and Michael unyielding, Willow begins to spiral. But this spiral isn't silent, it's strategic, festering, and growing louder in her mind until it becomes the only voice she hears. The voice that insists she's not the problem. The voice that whispers that Wiley and Amelia are being kept from her not out of protection, but manipulation. The voice that convinces her they are suffering without her and that only she can rescue them. This distorted perception leads Willow into uncharted emotional terrain. She begins charting out timelines, tracking routines, and using every bit of information she remembers from her time in Michael's household to try to regain access to her children. But this is no longer the cautious, careful Willow that fans once knew. This is a version of her reshaped by betrayal and humiliation, fueled by a dangerous belief that she has the moral high ground even while she begins to walk a legal and ethical tightrope. The secrets she once kept buried, like her involvement in terrorizing Daisy, now bubble just beneath the surface, threatening to unravel her credibility if they come to light. And Michael, already burdened by the trauma Willow left in her wake, grows increasingly fearful of what she might do next. Instead of waiting for legal channels or Michael's forgiveness, Willow decides that the only way to get her children back is to become the force that can't be ignored. She begins contacting journalists under fake names, leaking selective stories about her past with Michael. She paints herself as a mother being denied rights after escaping a toxic relationship, distorting the truth to generate public sympathy. She contacts family advocacy groups, claiming she's been unjustly alienated, hoping someone, anyone, will pick up her cause. Behind all this is a woman unraveling. A mother so obsessed with rewriting her place in her children's lives that she no longer cares who gets hurt in the process. Her behavior grows more erratic. She's seen outside the school grounds. She sends anonymous letters to Amelia's daycare. She hacks into Wiley's tablet to leave him voice messages. At first, these actions seem harmless, desperate perhaps, but not dangerous. But then, as security tightens and Michael prepares restraining orders, Willow's panic accelerates into delusion. She becomes convinced Michael is indoctrinating the children against her. That they're being fed lies and made to forget their real mother. This imagined injustice pushes her into a final, terrifying phase of her obsession, a plan to take them back. She begins preparing. She changes her appearance slightly, cuts and dyes her hair. She rents a small apartment under a false name outside of Port Charles. She starts assembling resources, clothes, toys, travel papers. She's planning not just a visit, but a disappearance. In her mind, it's the only path forward. She tells herself it will only be temporary, until she can explain things to them. Until the law can see she's their real mother, until Michael realizes he was wrong. But none of this is rational. None of it grounded in any reality except the one she's invented out of pain and desperation. Meanwhile, Michael is drowning in fear and fury. He's already discovered her anonymous leaks to the press. He's learned from Sasha, still recovering herself, that Willow was responsible for the stalking that drove Daisy away. And now he sees the threads connecting, the sudden break from Drew. The erratic sightings, the obsessive outreach. Michael no longer sees Willow as a grieving mother, he sees her as a threat. He tells the PCPD. He hires security. He even considers relocating temporarily to ensure the children's safety. But nothing can fully protect a child from a parent who truly believes they're saving them, no matter the cost. Port Charles becomes a town on edge. Carly begins to suspect something is wrong. Nina, still reeling from her own betrayals, tries to intervene, but Willow won't listen to anyone. She's convinced she's being persecuted, that the entire town is complicit in tearing her away from her children. It's no longer just a fight for custody. It's a war to reclaim her identity, her worth. Her motherhood. And if she can't win it in court or in Michael's heart, she's willing to win it in the shadows. The tragic irony is that Willow wants to find herself by sacrifice and grace. She endured cancer, loss, and heartbreak with quiet resilience. But now, all that strength has been warped by bitterness and isolation. In trying to reclaim her children, she's becoming someone they may no longer recognize. Someone they may fear. And as the walls close in and law enforcement begins to track her every move, the question becomes not whether Willow will try to take Wiley and Amelia, but whether anyone can stop her before it's too late. In the weeks ahead, Port Charles will face one of its most emotional reckonings. Friends will be forced to choose sides. Secrets will be exposed. And at the heart of it all, a mother will risk everything, not for justice, but for obsession. Willow's journey has reached a dark crossroads, and unless someone intervenes, this new chapter may end not in redemption, but in irreversible tragedy. Willow's descent into a darker psychological state marks a chilling new evolution in her storyline, one that threatens to undo every last fragment of redemption she once clung to. What was once regret and heartbreak has twisted into obsession and control, and now, as new ideas take hold in her fractured mind, it becomes clear that she is no longer operating from a place of love, but from a place of vengeance and delusion. These ideas are not fleeting impulses. They are becoming fully formed plans built upon emotional ruin and the desperate need to reclaim a sense of purpose. With Michael refusing to forgive her, and the doors to Wiley and Amelia's lives slammed shut, Willow begins to spiral into a mindset where morality no longer matters, only the outcome does. These aren't just dark thoughts anymore, they are blueprints for retribution, and each day she allows them to take root is a day closer to catastrophe. As Michael tries to move forward, attempting to rebuild stability for his children in the aftermath of Willow's collapse, he remains unaware that Willow is studying him from afar. Every move, every schedule, every lapse in routine becomes ammunition in her mind. She starts to see weaknesses she can exploit, moments she can turn into leverage. She no longer sees herself as separated from the children by consequence, but by injustice. In her version of events, Michael is the enemy, a captor keeping her children in an emotional prison. This black and white thinking becomes the core of her delusion, that if she doesn't act, if she doesn't take control, she'll lose them forever. It's this belief that fuels her darkest ideas yet, ones that don't just challenge legality or morality, but sanity. Willow begins drafting letters to lawyers, real and fake, using pseudonyms to gather information on how to manipulate custody rights, legal loopholes, and even restraining orders. She begins to document her own warped narrative, rewriting history to portray Michael as controlling, emotionally abusive, and negligent. She even considers leaking old photos and texts out of context to paint him in a manipulative light. What's most disturbing is that she believes this is justice. In her mind, she's not waging war, she's fighting for her children's freedom. She justifies every lie, every deception, with the belief that a mother's love outweighs the truth. And the more she fixates on this fantasy, the more she drifts from the reality that her actions are poisoning everything she once stood for. Michael, meanwhile, begins to feel the pressure. He hears whispers. Detects subtle shifts in how the media is portraying him. Notices mutual friends hesitating, unsure of who to believe anymore. He begins to feel a presence lurking at the edge of every day, like a shadow of something once trusted and now twisted. When a small, anonymous article surfaces online accusing him of coercive control, Michael knows the war has begun. And the worst part? He knows exactly who wrote it. But without proof. He's left to suffer in silence as Willow continues her campaign of calculated chaos. What was once a custody dispute is now a psychological war zone. Michael starts locking everything down: school pickups, phone calls, daycare lists, social media accounts. He removes old family photos from the house. Every trace of Willow's past presence is scrubbed clean in an effort to distance her from the lives of the children she's slowly transforming into symbols of her delusion. But even as he builds walls around Wiley and Amelia, Willow finds cracks. She sends anonymous packages with hand-drawn cards and children's books they used to read together. She manipulates well-meaning neighbors into accidentally mentioning the children in passing. She stalks Nina, hoping she'll become a pawn again. And worse, she starts reaching out to Wiley's teachers and Amelia's caretakers with stories of emotional trauma, pretending to be a concerned observer. The madness intensifies when Willow's twisted thoughts turn toward permanent solutions. If the system won't allow her to reclaim her children, maybe she needs to create a situation where they have no choice but to turn to her. She imagines a crisis, an emergency that only she can fix. She begins researching illnesses. Reading about symptoms. She imagines poisoning herself and collapsing publicly to draw sympathy and concern. She writes a fake medical report that claims Michael has refused necessary treatments for Wiley. She even toys with the idea of staging an accident, one that puts the children at risk just enough to justify legal reevaluation. Michael senses it. He starts having nightmares. He begins carrying protection. He puts security cameras outside the house. He knows that Willow is no longer simply hurt, she is unstable. And when a stranger is spotted taking photos of the children at the park, Michael knows this is no longer about custody. It's about survival. He informs the PCPD. Reaches out to Alexis for legal defense, and warns Carly to keep her guard up. But even so, he knows deep down, Willow isn't just hiding in the shadows. She's waiting for the perfect moment to act. As the situation grows more intense, Port Charles becomes a city on edge. Friends and family are forced to take sides. Nina, once Willow's biggest critic, begins to worry that things have gone too far. Sasha, still healing, confronts Willow in a coffee shop, warning her to stop before she ruins what little remains of her humanity. But Willow is beyond logic. She looks through Sasha like she's already erased the past. All she sees now is the future, one where Wiley and Amelia are by her side again, no matter what it costs. In this dark new chapter, Willow is not just a woman mourning lost love, she is a mother consumed by an obsession so powerful, it threatens to erase the person she once was. And Michael is no longer just a father protecting his children, he is a man preparing for war against the woman he once promised forever. What happens next could shatter Port Charles in ways it may never recover from. And no one, not even Jason, not even Carly, can predict just how far Willow is willing to go.